My predecessor, Elton Smith, Elton was a real believer in developing young leaders. And so one day he showed up at the house, and I was milking cows. I was in the barn, and Betty was not prepared for company in any way. She didn't know who that little short guy was. He wondered where I was. She sent him to the barn. And I was in the milking parlor, and he came in, and I knew who he was, but I had never really met him. And I was, I had 12 milking machines running and was busier than a one-arm paper hanger, and this guy wanted to talk about Farm Bureau and why I should run for the Farm Bureau board. And I said, does it look like I really have time for the Farm Bureau board? Well, if you knew Elton, he wouldn't give up. That's what Farm Bureau has done, is maintained that opportunity to work with others. And we didn't have to, and it's a real plus for agriculture. We never really had to bring outside people in to tell us what we ought to do or what we shouldn't ought to do. We had leadership enough to figure that out. I love Westerns, and I read all of Louis L'Amour's, but I had a box that big. And what L'Amour always said, you got to ride for the brand. And that's what Farm Bureau leaders do, whether they believe in it or not. They better ride for the brand. And I went down to Branch County to a Farm Bureau meeting, and Dean Pridgeon, another mentor of mine, longtime mentor, good friend, longtime mentor of mine, said, Jack, if you want to be successful in the president's office, get an issue that you can get behind and go with it. And Right to Farm was what I did. And we put together a small group of, I don't know, maybe a dozen, but there were 3 or 4 of us who led that Right to Farm challenge and really wrote it, with the help of our staff people. First one in the country, copied by a number of states. Now just about every state has some kind of a Right to Farm bill.
I remember as a young farmer what happened to my life when I became involved with a state young farmer committee, and at that time there was a leaders conference, there was another conference, and then there was events all the time. The greatest thing that it did for me was taught me that I've got to establish my priorities and use my time wisely and set goals to get done before you can be off the farm for a couple of days. So that you don't think of. And I told that to one of the young farmers meetings one day when I was speaking. And it was interesting to watch the reaction, because it was kind of like, yeah, it's making me schedule my time. And so that alone, and that ability that Farm Bureau had to get people to schedule their time, set their priorities, and become deeply involved when they wanted to, or a lesser level of involvement when the issue didn't bother them. The challenge leadership will always have is wanting to know what you as a member are passionate about.